Hey radiant Leo soul, let me start with something bold. The biggest win of your life is unfolding right now. Not next week. Not when you're finally ready. But today. July 20th, 2025. If you're watching this video, I want you to pause for a moment and feel into that. This is not a coincidence. You didn't randomly click here. Something may be a whisper in your heart, a sign you couldn't ignore, or even a sense of unexplained urgency pulled you in. That something was the universe aligning itself to bring you this exact message. So let's be clear from the very beginning. You're not just watching a horoscope. You're stepping into a destined message that your soul has been waiting for. Over the past weeks, maybe months, you've felt it, haven't you? Like the world has been spinning but you've been standing still. You've done the work. You've stayed strong. But nothing seems to move. The people you once trusted feel distant. The dreams you almost touched seem to keep drifting further away. And yet, even in the silence, something inside you has refused to give up. That something is your fire. And that fire, dear Leo, is exactly what's about to burn away everything that no longer serves you. Because right now, yes, this very momentous spiritual crack is opening in your path. And through that crack, light is pouring in. Not from somewhere out there, but from deep within you. This isn't about becoming someone new. This is about finally becoming all that you already are. You are not just surviving. You are a mountain shifting its own tectonic plates to reveal gold. You are the sun rising again after believing you had set. So what does this biggest win really mean? It means the version of you that others once underestimated is about to shine so brightly they won't be able to look away. It means the struggles you endured in silence are becoming your crown, forged from fire and made to be worn unapologetically. It means you're no longer waiting for permission. You're stepping through a door that only opens when you claim your place in this world with full-hearted certainty. Now, before we go deeper into what the tarot reveals today, and the cosmic transits that are amplifying this shift, I want to thank you. Truly. For being here. For showing up. For trusting this moment enough to press play and stay. Let me take just a moment to say this from my heart. Every like, every comment, every time you share or subscribe, it creates a ripple that carries this message further. And your presence here, right now, is a sign that you are part of something bigger than just a forecast. You're part of a soul-led movement toward awakening, empowerment, and deep cosmic truth. So don't just watch. Engage. Let me know below. What drew you here today? What in your life feels ready to shift? Drop a comment and simply say, I'm ready for the biggest win of my life. Because I promise you this. By the end of this video, you won't just understand what's happening, you'll feel it in every part of who you are. Let's begin. There is a sacred beauty in the way things break, not because we admire the ruin, but because something hidden is finally asking to be seen. And Leo, for you, that breaking isn't about weakness. It's about release. It's about finally laying down what was never yours to carry in the first place. The strength you've worn like armor, the endless resilience, the radiant smile that persisted even when your heart ached, has served its purpose. But now, that armor is beginning to crack. Not because you're failing, but because something deeper in you is beginning to breathe. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when the outer identity, the mask of performance, the need to be admired, the role of the unshakable one can no longer contain the full truth of who you are. That moment is here. And the tremble you may feel in your chest, the slight disorientation that comes with change, is not something to fix or rush past. It is the sign that your spirit is awakening from its long-held stillness. Not waking up to do more, but to be more. And more importantly, to be more you. Think of a lotus flower growing in still water. From beneath thick mud and pressure, it slowly rises toward the light without ever needing to explain why. Its journey isn't loud. It isn't for display. And yet, when it breaks the surface, it becomes the very embodiment of purity and grace. That's where you are now. The mud was never a punishment, it was the preparation. And the surface is near. So many Leos have been holding back tears for years, tears that were never allowed because you were too often the one others leaned on. You were the steady ground for the people who couldn't find their own. And now, the paradox, your own healing begins when you allow yourself to not be the strong one for a moment. When you soften. When you rest. When you listen to the quiet voice that says, I want more. Not more in the material sense, but more in depth, in freedom, in inner peace. This inner shift is not a collapse, it's a resurrection. And like any true rebirth, it requires the death of who you thought you had to be. For some, that may feel terrifying. Letting go of an identity, especially one you've built with so much effort, can feel like betrayal. But I want to offer you a gentler truth. You are not betraying your past. You are honoring your evolution. The shedding that is happening now is not rejection. It is reverence. You're not walking away from the version of you that once survived, you're simply not forcing yourself to stay small inside it anymore. And yes, there may be grief in this. Because you've poured so much of yourself into that old form. But growth doesn't come without surrender. And freedom doesn't come without honesty. That tightness in your chest, that feeling of restlessness, that's your soul tugging at the seams of the story you've outgrown. This isn't a quick transformation. It's not a switch you flip and suddenly feel brand new. True inner awakening is quieter than that. It's the kind of shift that happens when you take a deep breath and, for the first time in a long time, you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need to shine for the room. You don't need to perform. You are enough, even in your quiet. Especially in your quiet. From an astrological lens, Leo is ruled by the sun, the luminary that gives life, light, visibility. But even the sun has its eclipses. Even the brightest light needs to move through darkness in order to remember why it shines. This moment you're in, it's your sacred eclipse. It's where your old light is meeting your deeper truth. And what comes next isn't just brightness, it's brilliance born from truth. So take a breath. Feel the crack in the armor and know it is opening, not to break you but to bless you. You're not losing yourself. You're returning home. Not to who you were told to be, but to the Leo you were always destined to become. And that, my dear one, is why this moment matters more than you can imagine. When life places a mirror in front of us, it rarely reflects only what we expect. Often, what appears is the deeper story, the quiet strength we've underestimated, the truth we've tried to outrun, the power we once gave away but are now reclaiming. And through the symbolism of the tarot, we are offered not answers, but invitations. Invitations to pause, to witness, to remember. In this moment of your journey, each card drawn is not just an archetype. It's a reflection of a living energy already moving within you. These cards are not outside forces acting upon you, but rather mirrors of your internal state, shaped by your choices, your growth, and the momentum of your soul. Strength, the first and most intimate card for Leo, reminds you that true power doesn't require volume. It requires presence. Think of the quiet confidence of a lion sitting under the sun, surveying the horizon not because it needs to prove anything, but because it knows what it is. That's the kind of power returning to you now. The kind that doesn't need to roar to be felt. The kind that embraces both shadow and light without shame. Just like the controlled breath before a leap, this card tells you, you are strong, not despite what you've survived but because of how you've chosen to carry it. Then comes the sun, your ruling luminary. Its presence in this spread is no accident. After a time of inner obscurity, confusion, or personal eclipses, the sun rises not as a reward, but as a natural consequence of clarity. You are beginning to see yourself not through the eyes of those who misunderstood you, but through the clear and unwavering light of self-recognition. What was murky is now becoming sharp. The goals you once questioned are aligning with your truth. The fears you held onto are dissolving, not because they are gone, but because your understanding of them has transformed. The Six of Wands follows, and this is a moment many overlook because it does not announce itself with fanfare. Instead, it blooms in silence, often in the form of quiet acknowledgement from others, yes, but more importantly, from yourself. You are being seen now for who you truly are. Perhaps not by everyone, but by those who matter most. And even if no one else notices, the universe does. The echoes of your efforts are creating ripples. The seeds you sowed long ago are sprouting in places you didn't think to look. Now, the Queen of Wands steps forward not as someone separate from you, but as the embodiment of a version of you that is ready to take center stage. She is both radiant and grounded, fierce and graceful. This is the part of you that dares to take up space without apology. That no longer waits for permission to be fully seen. She isn't reckless, she's deeply intentional. She creates because it is her nature, not because she seeks approval. And that is your gift now, to step into life not as someone who adapts, but as someone who commands energy through presence, passion, and purpose. Finally, the Ace of Swords enters like a beam of lightning through dense clouds. Its clarity can be jarring. There is truth surfacing now that may cut through illusions you've protected. But remember, swords don't just divide, they also liberate. The blade of awareness is not here to wound you, but to sever the last thread tying you to an outdated version of yourself. Perhaps a story you've long carried about who you should be, what you're worthy of, or how far you're allowed to go is now unraveling. Let it fall away. Because what's underneath that falsehood is something infinitely more valuable, the unfiltered clarity of your voice, your vision, your values. What all these cards have in common is not prediction, they are presence. They ask you not just to listen, but to act from the deeper knowing that is being stirred within you. And action, as the old teachings remind us, does not always mean movement. Sometimes the most profound action is stillness. choosing not to react, choosing not to self-abandon, choosing not to dim your light simply because others can't hold its warmth. So as you move forward through this unfolding chapter, know this: your story isn't being rewritten, it's being reclaimed. Line by line, breath by breath. You are not becoming someone new. You are finally becoming someone whole. Transformation rarely arrives with fireworks. More often, it appears as a subtle reordering of the inner world, a quiet but undeniable shift in how we relate to ourselves and everything around us. When we've allowed ourselves to soften after the unraveling of outdated versions of who we thought we had to be, you naturally begin to see life not through the lens of fear or obligation, but through presence. From this stillness, clarity emerges. And when clarity meets alignment, real change takes root not just on the inside, but in the four essential dimensions of human experience: love, work, family, and the body that carries us. In the realm of love, Leo is often painted as dramatic or demanding. But underneath that intensity lies something far more sacred: the deep yearning for true resonance, for a connection that doesn't just entertain the ego but nourishes the soul. For those walking alone, this period marks a threshold. A destined encounter is not just possible, it's approaching. But it won't arrive as convenience or fantasy. It will come as recognition. A feeling of remembering someone you haven't met yet. This kind of bond doesn't require theatrics, it invites awareness. It's two energies harmonizing naturally because both individuals have finally come home to themselves. And for those already partnered, the work now is not about maintaining the appearance of connection but deepening it. This is a time to return to the essence of why you chose each other in the first place. To release unspoken resentments and begin again, not from scratch, but from truth. The numerology of the day totals to nini, a number of endings with purpose, signaling that you're wrapping up a karmic cycle. And that means your heart is being rewired for a more conscious way of relating. In the sphere of career and finances, the landscape is shifting from performance to purpose. You're not building to impress anymore. You're building because it's time. There is something in you, an idea, a gift, a solution that is no longer interested in waiting for outside approval. This is your call to construct something lasting, something real, and something that aligns with your values rather than your fears. Opportunities will present themselves, but not all opportunities are meant for you. That's why discernment is essential. This is not a time for reckless yes. It's a time to respond from the highest frequency of inner knowing. A quick reward may glitter, but long-term fulfillment moves slowly. Let the color lemon yellow be your reminder today: clarity before momentum. Vision before expansion. In the area of family and close relationships, healing won't always look like reconciliation. It will often look like truth. Perhaps there is a long-standing wound, especially involving a maternal figure or feminine energy, that is surfacing for resolution. This pain may not be loud, but it's persistent. And now, it's time to face it. Not with blame, but with insight. You are not here to carry the karma of others. You are here to learn, to observe, and to choose differently. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is step back. Not in punishment, but in respect for your own peace. Holding boundaries is not an act of separation, it's an invitation for deeper, more authentic connection. When love is no longer filtered through guilt or duty, it becomes whole. And finally, your body, your most loyal companion. It has carried the weight of every chapter you've lived. If you listen, it will tell you where energy is stuck, where depletion has taken hold, and where vitality is waiting to return. Begin with small sacred rituals. Replace the frantic search for motivation with a quiet return to nourishment. Simple acts: warm water in the morning, a slow walk in early sunlight, moments of breath when no one is watching. These are the foundations of radiant health. Avoid what dulls your light, be it overprocessed food, overstimulation, or constant noise. Let your physical self become a sanctuary, not just a vessel. And know this: when you tend to your body with care, your energy aligns with precision. The heart chakra and solar center within you, so vital for Leo, respond not to effort, but to devotion. You're not changing because something is wrong with you. You're changing because something deeper in you is finally being remembered. In each corner of your life, love, work, family, and wellness, the shift is already underway. It doesn't have to be loud to be life-altering. All it has to be is real. And it is. Sometimes the most dangerous place we can stay is the one that feels familiar. Not because it's safe, but because we've grown used to its weight. And Leo, for someone born under the fire of the sun, the act of carrying burdens too long can feel like a slow forgetting of your true nature. You've been strong for so long, holding space for others, showing up when no one else would, pushing forward even when your spirit quietly whispered for pause. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you beautifully human. But now, there's a subtle shift in the air, and it's asking something different of you. Not more endurance, but conscious movement. There is a difference between sacred stillness and stagnation. The first allows clarity to emerge, the second clouds it. And while rest is necessary and holy, what's happening now is not rest. It's hesitation masked as reflection. Deep down, you can feel it. That low hum in your chest, the tiny inner resistance that shows up not as fear shouting, but as procrastination whispering, not yet. Maybe later. That voice doesn't come from your wisdom. It comes from your weariness. And when we're exhausted, our minds often confuse stillness with avoidance, and safety with self-abandonment. This part of your path doesn't require a grand gesture. It doesn't demand that you leap recklessly into the unknown. But it does ask for honesty. And honesty, in its purest form, is an act of courage. The type of courage that doesn't wait until you feel ready. The kind that shows up shaky, but shows up anyway. There's a concept found in ancient philosophy that speaks of the moment right before transformation, the tipping point between the old self and the new awareness. It's said that this is the most fragile time in a person's journey, not because they are weakest here, but because they are being asked to let go of the last familiar thing they used to rely on, the story. The story of who they've been. The story of why it's not yet the right time. The story that says growth must wait for ideal conditions. But growth is not a seasonal visitor. It doesn't follow the calendar. It comes when the soul calls it forth. And that's what's happening now. Your soul is ready, even if your mind is catching up. The caution in this phase is subtle but powerful, the illusion that you need more time. But more time is not always what we need. Sometimes what we truly need is permission to act, to speak, to move forward with the truth as it stands today, not as we hope it will feel someday. And no one can give you that permission but you. When we talk about windows of transformation in astrology, especially within solar cycles, we're not talking about random events. We're referring to energy gates, periods of heightened alignment between your inner intention and external opportunity. And while these moments are potent, they are also impermanent. A doorway doesn't stay open forever. Eventually, it narrows, and what was once easily accessible begins to drift out of reach. That's why this moment matters. Not because you'll never get another chance, but because this one has its own unique magic, aligned specifically with your readiness now. You don't need to be fearless to walk through. You just need to be willing. There's an old teaching that says courage is not the absence of fear, but the refusal to be ruled by it. That trembling step you take, even with your doubts, is more sacred than waiting for a perfect moment that may never arrive. Progress does not require perfection. It requires participation. This is the moment to choose participation over paralysis. The fire within you is not demanding to be a wildfire. It's simply asking you not to let it go out. Take the step, however small. Make the decision, however uncertain. Lean toward your edge, not because you are ready, but because you are alive. And that aliveness, Leo, is your truest proof that you're not finished. That you're still becoming. That the gate is still open. Walk through it now, while your heart still remembers what called you here in the first place. So here we are, Leo. You've come with questions, with weight on your chest, with hopes quietly tucked beneath your courage. And maybe now, you're beginning to feel that what you came looking for was never lost. It was simply waiting for you to pause long enough to hear it speak. Everything we've explored in this reading has not been about adding more to you, but about peeling back what no longer reflects who you've become. You are not seeking your light. You are your light. And every setback, every silence, every heavy day has been shaping you not into someone new, but into someone more fully you. You don't need the world's applause to be valid. You don't need permission to rise. And you certainly don't need to fit back into a mold you've already outgrown. The truth is, you've never been broken, only buried under layers of expectation, fear, and survival. And now, Leo, you're rising. But not with noise. You're rising with presence. With calm. With that unmistakable sense that something inside you has finally remembered, I am here to lead my own life. So let me ask you, what would change today if you stopped waiting for the perfect timing, and chose instead to align with the power already unfolding inside you? What might become possible if you trusted that the biggest win of your life is not a moment you chase, but a state of being you step into? Not because the path ahead is certain, but because you've finally decided that you are. There is no victory more profound than the one where you no longer abandon yourself to belong. And that's what this moment is. Not the end of a struggle, but the beginning of living from a place that no longer asks for permission. You've done the heavy lifting. You've sat through the silence. Now it's time to move with intention. If even one word today awakens something in you, something small, something brave, something alive, I invite you to honor that by claiming it. Don't just let this message pass through. Let it land. Let it take root. And when you're ready, leave a comment below that says, I am ready to receive the destined victory that was always meant for me. Let it be your quiet declaration. A whisper to your future self. And while you're here, please remember to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone whose fire might need a gentle reminder. Every single comment, every engagement, every moment of your presence helps carry this message further and helps build the soul family that is eternal mindfulness. We are not here to predict your life. We are here to remind you that you already hold the power to shape it. And I hope you feel that truth vibrating through you right now. Let this not be the end of a video but the beginning of a new agreement with yourself. One where you choose your path, your peace, and your purpose with fierce grace and unwavering joy. So I leave you with this. You were never meant to dim. You were born to blaze. And the world has waited long enough. It's time. You are the biggest win. And the next chapter? It begins with one decision, yours.